All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to story questions. I have it over here, and I'm going to pull up questions 269 and 270. So I have those queued up here. So here are the first two questions that I'm going to write. What idea is the original spark for this story? I feel this step is really important. And so that's why I have this question as one of the first steps. In terms of the original spark, you may have already written it down. Keep in mind, you just wrote everything here. You wrote down all your ideas. I'm hoping one of the ideas that you wrote down was your original spark, but I sort of have this question here as a safety net, just in case you didn't write your original spark down. So if for some reason you didn't write your original spark down, I want you to write it down now. I want you to answer this question. What idea is the original spark for this story? For me, the original spark is actually a story that I saw a while ago about a mom who started a business for her son. And it's an idea that I've sort of kept in the back of my head. My mom just passed away recently, and so I've been thinking about her a lot. Sometimes it's just timing. Sometimes you have certain things going on in life and you recall certain images or certain stories, and so that's sort of the spark here. But part of this is I want to see if I can put my own spin on it. Okay, so now I've given you two chances here. I've asked you this question: what do I already know about my story? I've also asked what idea is the original spark for this story. I'm hoping between these two questions, we've now captured this initial spark. And so the next thing I like to do here is I like to go one step further. And that's where we have this question here. So make sure you have this written down. What about the original spark excites you? I wouldn't say all ideas are created equal. Some ideas, they hit us in such a way that when they arrive, there's just something about them that we want to explore. There's an energy there. And so there's probably different facets to the idea that are really drawing you, that they're really pulling you in. What excites me about my idea is the personal connection that I have to this mother and son story. My mom and I, we had a very strong relationship. We had an incredible love for one another. I certainly miss her. And this story here, it gives me an opportunity to sort of tap into that. Aside from the mother-son relationship, I'm also excited about the business side of the story. I love seeing people trying to build something from nothing against all odds. So for me, this would also be an opportunity to show someone starting a business, being able to sort of like craft, not, obviously the dream and the inspiration and the blood, sweat, tears, that sort of thing of like building the business. But then there's also part of it where you have the obstacles and you have the challenges and someone getting knocked down and things not going right, and that struggle of trying to build a business, trying to raise a son or look after a son, love a son. So, it has those components to it. I like for this to be an underdog story with a lot of heart and passion. So yeah, that's how I view it. I view this as a single mom. I view her as an underdog of doing something that's very difficult. And again, this is sort of almost a selfless thing where it's more for her son than it is for her. And so those are some of the things that I'm excited about to explore. And so look what we've been able to do so far. We've been able to set some parameters for ourselves, our ideas. For me, I just have this small little idea that I'm starting with. I'm hoping, again, on your side, I hope you might have pages and pages of ideas already, which is great. But just make sure that you've captured the spark. What about the spark exactly is it that excites you? And so from here, what I like to do is the next question I have a note here for is, I'm going to go to 169 here. So I'm going to go to 169. How can you make this story personal? For me and my story, one of my goals, one of my parameters right here is I want to feel a personal connection to it. For me, this was very important. I want to feel a personal connection to it. In case you haven't done this, maybe you've answered all of these questions, but now looking at it, maybe you haven't answered this question. Maybe you haven't answered, how can you make this story personal? I want you to think about the ways that you can connect your idea to things that really matter to you, things that connect to you, to what you like. I want you to be, personally invested in this story, especially before you get too deep into it. I want you to already start to see the pathways of how you're gonna keep this story personal to you. Follow-up question I want to add here is, what is personal about this idea to you? What is personal? What is personal about this idea to you? For me, again, I've already mentioned the mother-son relationship and how that's personal to me. I'm not necessarily great at business, but I do have an interest in business. And so I enjoy hearing business stories and I like learning about business. When I go to the bookstore, it's often one of the first sections that I'll go to. So that's personal to me, is looking at that, exploring that a little bit, maybe having some fun there. And another aspect of this question here for me, what is personal about this idea to you? For me, this is a question that I'm probably going to add more to when I learn more about my story, and especially since I want to keep a personal connection to my story. So like I said, there might be some pathways that I've already opened up that you can already see. They're like, oh yes, this, I love this, and I feel a connection to that. And then sometimes, the more you get into your story, the more you get into your characters, you'll start to see more ways where you can add on and make the story personal. So I have this question here. Can you make a list of 20 of your favorite stories? Could be movies, TV shows, novels, etc. from the past year. And within that list, try to identify 2 or 3 themes out of each of those. Do you see common themes? So here, I'm using this question as sort of inspiration. So I'm taking that question. I actually want to sort of transform this question. I want to make an adjustment here. And so that's the question I'm sort of starting with. But the real question I have for you, the one I really want to use here, is this one. Are there any potential movies, stories, books, TV shows, or videos that you may draw inspiration from? So when we look at our idea, when we come here, we look at our idea here, and we're thinking about our story, we might start to get a sense of, this is making me think of this book, or this TV show, or this movie. And so now I'm going to use this question right here. Are there any potential movies, stories, books, TV shows, or videos that you may draw inspiration from? And so for me, I'm actually going to put a couple subcategories here. The first category I think of, are there any sort of mother-son stories or single mom movies or TV shows that I can think of? So let me go ahead and write that down. Are there mother and son stories, movies, TV shows? All right, so that's my first sort of subcategory. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight this here. I'm gonna take this away. I've used that as inspiration. And so let me think of some mother-son stories. So I'm thinking of Boyhood comes to mind, and Lion. In terms of single mom TV shows, I haven't actually seen it, but I'm thinking of Maid, the one with Margaret Qualley. I've heard good things about Maid, so that's another thing there. Another one that comes to mind is Forrest Gump, and going way back, the original, The Karate Kid, mother-son story. So those are a few things that that come to mind. Another category that I have that I'm going to type up here is movies about overcoming odds. Like I said, I want there, coming back up here, I want there to be some inspiration to it. So I said there wanted to be some inspiration. So I'm kind of thinking like just movies about overcoming odds that maybe kind of fit this mother-son thing a little bit, maybe. I'm trying to think of certain movies, not necessarily every inspiring movie, but just certain movies that maybe there's like a spirit to them that I'm going after with this one. And so ones that come to mind for me are Aaron Brockovich, Hidden Figures, The Pursuit of Happiness. Maybe Jerry Maguire. I think these are the ones that kind of have the spirit that I'm looking for. Then I'm just going to add one more category here. I'm going to add business movies. And so just a few that come to mind. There's a movie called The Bookshop, which we saw a while ago. But for some reason that movie comes to mind. There's a movie I just saw recently, a Netflix movie called Nanas. I enjoyed that one. There's one that I can think of. I actually haven't seen this, but there's a movie with Jennifer Lawrence called Joy. That's a possibility. I'd have to look at that some more. The movie Chef. Steve Jobs, the one with Michael Fassbender. And then there's also an independent movie that we've seen about sort of a flailing pizza shop called 8 Slices. I actually enjoyed that one. And so here's some business movies. What I love about this question is that not only can each of these movies or TV shows, not only can they serve as inspiration, but for me personally, it helps me to sort of start to see the tone of my story that I'm trying to create. Again, I mean, for movies about overcoming odds, I could think of movies like Rocky. I could mention another movie that I love, Men of Honor. There's different kinds. There's a lot of sports movies I could probably reel off, but I'm not necessarily going for that sort of inspiration. Military or sports, or there's like a certain tone to it, and I think these maybe there's things about these movies here where maybe I can draw a little bit from that. And so I start to get a feel for what I can do with my story. If I start to tap into, and if you sort of like go through this, you sort of get a vibe. And so that's what I love about thinking about the potential movies or stories or video, whatever it is, you start to draw inspiration, and you can start to see how that could sort of shape my story, help influence it. All right, and so yeah, look, I mean, we haven't been at it too long. This hasn't been that long, but yeah, at the same time, we have started to see our story take shape. So I've listed 7 questions here. I've only given you 7 questions, and for me, I'm starting to see the story take shape. I'm getting a little bit of a feel for this story. There's still a lot to go. I'm at a point here where just as I've gotten into some questions, but I've also come up with 2 huge, at least for me. So here's what I'll do next. I have 2 questions that are coming to mind that are sort of like they're sort of screaming at me. The first question is,